The distress beacon screamed across the void for 17 hours before anyone heard it. Ambassador Lyra Sithani watched from the observation deck as another colony ship exploded in the distance, its hull torn apart by living weapons that pulsed with sickly green light. The Dovrak had come without warning 6 months ago, and now her people were dying by the billions. Have the Kelthram responded? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Her aide, a younger Rilani named Torin, shook his head. All 4 of his arms trembled slightly. Fear was universal, even among a species that had not known war for 3,000 years. Below them, Talos Prime burned in isolated patches where Dovrak biobombs had struck. The enemy did not want to destroy their world completely. They wanted to harvest it. Harvest them. The Dovrak absorbed other species, taking their genetic material and creating new horrors. Lyra had seen the footage from the outer colonies. She still had nightmares about the screaming. Send the beacon again, she ordered. All frequencies. Maximum power. What she did not know was that her desperate signal had already gone somewhere unexpected. The old relay station at the edge of their space had been damaged in the first Dovrak attack. It rerouted the message through an ancient network, one that connected to systems the Rilani had never explored. The beacon traveled through the dark, bouncing between dormant satellites, until it reached a small moon orbiting a gas giant in a system the locals called Sol. Admiral Petrov was reviewing supply reports when the alarm went off. He swore in Russian and pulled up the sensor data. His station on Europa was meant to watch for asteroids and pirates, not receive alien distress calls. Yet there it was, repeating in a language that made no sense whatsoever. Get Tanaka up here. He barked at his communications officer. Right now. Dr. Yuki Tanaka arrived within minutes, still wearing her lab coat. She was young for a xenolinguist, barely 30, but she was the only person on Europa Station who specialized in theoretical alien languages. Humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel only 5 years ago, and had not yet encountered any other intelligent species. Most people thought they were alone. Tanaka had always believed otherwise. She listened to the signal 3 times, her fingers flying across her tablet. It's definitely artificial, she said. The patterns are too regular. This is language, Admiral. Someone is trying to communicate. Can you translate it? Give me 6 hours. Petrov gave her 4. By then, 2 more Rilani colonies had fallen, though he did not know that yet. When Tanaka returned, her face was pale. They are asking for help, she said quietly. They are under attack. They are dying. They mention coordinates and something that translates roughly as harvest or consume. Admiral, I think we just received a distress call from a species facing extinction. The Admiral stared at the star map. The coordinates were 60 light-years away, close enough to reach in a week with their experimental FTL drives, far enough that Earth had never looked in that direction. We should notify the Defense Council, he said. The debate lasted 2 days. Earth was still recovering from its own wars. The climate disasters had killed millions. The resource conflicts had nearly destroyed civilization. Humanity had finally achieved peace and unity, and now someone wanted them to go fight aliens they had never met to save other aliens they also had never met. We cannot ignore this, argued General Hassan during the final session. If there is intelligent life out there and if it is in danger, we have a moral obligation to respond. We have an obligation to our own people first, countered Ambassador Wei. We do not have resources to spare for a war that is not ours. In the end, they voted to send a small reconnaissance fleet, 5 ships including the UDS Indomitable, humanity's newest battlecruiser. Their orders were simple: investigate, make contact if possible, and report back. They were not authorized to engage in combat unless directly threatened. Admiral Petrov volunteered to lead the mission personally. He had spent his entire career preparing for threats that might come from space. Now one had arrived, just not aimed at Earth. They loaded supplies, armed the weapon systems, and said goodbye to families who wondered if they would ever return. The journey took 8 days. When they emerged from FTL at the edge of the Talos system, the first thing they saw was fire. Dozens of ships swarmed around the inner planet, some sleek and silvery, others organic and grotesque. Explosions bloomed in silence. Debris fields spread like metal clouds. My God, whispered the navigation officer. Petrov opened a channel to all ships. Battle stations. Prepare for combat. And someone start broadcasting on all frequencies that we are here to help. On Talos Prime, Ambassador Lyra received the transmission. The language was alien. The ship signatures were unknown. The technology was strange and primitive compared to Kelthram vessels. These were not their allies. These were complete strangers, and they were charging directly into the battle. "Who are they?" Torin asked, his voice shaking. Lyra watched as one of the unknown ships fired a projectile weapon at a Dovrak cruiser. The explosion was massive, far larger than anything the Rilani had ever used. The weapon was crude, kinetic, almost ancient. But it worked. The Dovrak ship split in half and began to drift. "I do not know," Lyra said softly, "but I think they might be our only chance." The Dovrak swarm noticed the newcomers immediately. 3 bioships broke formation and accelerated toward the human fleet, launching clouds of living missiles that writhed through space like serpents. Petrov watched them come and made a decision that would change everything. All ships engage. Show them what Earth can do. The battle for Talos Prime had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. Diana Ross had been a fighter pilot before she became a ship captain, and old instincts died hard. When the Dovrak biomissiles came screaming toward her destroyer, she did not hesitate. Hard starboard. "Point defense, fire at will." The living projectiles twisted through space with unnatural grace, avoiding the first barrage of bullets. They were learning, adapting, changing course mid-flight. Diana had never seen anything like it. One missile slammed into her port shield and began eating through it, literally consuming the energy barrier with tooth-like structures that ground against reality itself. "Flush the port shield," she ordered. "Vent it completely." Her crew looked at her like she was insane. Dropping shields in combat was suicide, but she had read the tactical data. These things fed on energy, so she would give them nothing to eat. The shield collapsed and the missile drifted harmlessly past, confused and starving. "Interesting," Admiral Petrov said over the fleet channel. He had been watching her maneuver. "All ships minimize shield usage. Kinetic weapons only. These things are biological, so treat them like animals, not machines." The battle spread across the system. Human ships moved differently than anything the Rilani or Dovrak had seen before. They were aggressive, almost reckless, using velocity and momentum like weapons. The UDS Indomitable rammed a Dovrak cruiser at half speed, crushing its organic hull before pulling away and finishing it with missiles. On Talos Prime, Ambassador Lyra watched in horror and fascination. "They are destroying their own ships," she whispered. "Why would they sacrifice so much?" Torin pulled up the tactical display. 3 human vessels were damaged, one severely. Yet they continued fighting, positioning themselves between the Dovrak and fleeing refugee ships. They were using themselves as shields. It made no strategic sense. Damaged ships should retreat, preserve resources, maintain fleet cohesion. These humans were doing the opposite. "Connect me to them," Lyra ordered. "I need to understand what they are thinking." The channel crackled with static before a voice came through, speaking in that harsh alien language. Dr. Tanaka's translation software kicked in, converting it to Rilani. "This is Admiral Petrov of Earth. We received your distress call. We are here to help." Earth? Lyra had never heard of such a place. "Who are you? Why are you sacrificing your ships for us?" There was a pause. Then Petrov responded with something that would echo across the galaxy for years to come. "Because you called for help and we answered. That is what decent people do." The simplicity of it stunned her. No political calculation. No demand for payment or alliance. Just basic decency, delivered with weapons that could crack planets. She did not know whether to be grateful or terrified. The Dovrak were equally confused. Prime Drone 447, the hive node coordinating the attack, analyzed the human tactics with growing concern. These newcomers fought with extreme prejudice, showing no fear of death or damage. They used explosive devices with radioactive payloads. They fired solid metal projectiles at relativistic speeds. They deployed chemical weapons that dissolved organic matter. Everything about them screamed danger. "Reassess threat level." Prime Drone 447 transmitted to the swarm. "Unknown species demonstrates extreme hostility and willingness for mutual destruction. Recommend caution." But caution was not in the Dovrak nature. They had conquered 17 species through overwhelming force and adaptation. These humans would be no different. The swarm launched a massive counterattack, sending 50 bioships against the human fleet. Diana watched them come and felt her pulse quicken. 50 against 5, poor odds, but she had grown up in the Australian outback, where everything tried to kill you and you learned to kill it first. All power to engines, she ordered. We are going through them, not around them. Her destroyer accelerated to maximum velocity, aiming directly at the center of the Dovrak formation. Her crew thought she had lost her mind. They were probably right. At the last second, she fired every missile she had and then kept going, using her ship as a battering ram. The explosion was spectacular. Dovrak's ship shattered. Her destroyer emerged on the other side, missing half its armor and venting atmosphere from 6 decks. But they were alive, and they had broken the enemy formation. You are insane, Petrov said over the channel, but there was approval in his voice. Guilty as charged. Sir. The Dovrak pulled back, suddenly uncertain. They had lost more ships in 20 minutes than they had in the entire Rilani campaign. These humans were different, dangerous. The swarm began to retreat, withdrawing to the outer system to regroup and analyze. As the battle ended, another ship emerged from FTL. This one was elegant, crystalline, beautiful in a way human vessels were not. It broadcast on all frequencies in perfect Rilani. This is Ambassador Torin of the Kelthrim Coalition. We received your distress call and have come to offer assistance. Lyra felt a wave of relief. Their allies had finally arrived. But when she looked at the human ships, damaged and burning but still protecting her world, she felt something else too. Gratitude. And a strange new respect for a species she had not known existed an hour ago. Ambassador Torin materialized on her command deck through a hologram. He was tall and thin, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. His people were the most advanced in the known galaxy, masters of energy manipulation and peaceful diplomacy. He took one look at the human fleet and his expression hardened. Lyra, what have you done? He asked quietly. Those are Deathworlders. I do not understand. Their planet is classified as Class 12 hazardous. Extreme gravity, toxic atmosphere by our standards, dominated by predatory species that evolved to hunt each other. Look at their ships. Look at their weapons. They come from a world that tried to kill them every single day, and they survived by becoming more dangerous than anything else. You have invited monsters into civilized space. Lyra looked at the human vessels again. She saw the damage, the crude but effective weapons, the willingness to sacrifice, and she thought about the Dovrak, who had slaughtered her people without mercy for 6 months. Maybe we needed monsters, she said softly. Torin's hologram flickered. Deathworlders do not stop, Ambassador. You have given them a cause. They will fight your war, yes. They will probably win. But what happens after? What happens when they turn those weapons toward us? It was a fair question, and Lyra had no answer. Haven Station floated between 3 star systems, neutral territory where different species met to trade and negotiate. It had not seen military vessels in 500 years. Now its docking bays were filled with warships, and the diplomatic halls buzzed with arguments that threatened to tear the galactic community apart. Dr. Yuki Tanaka walked through the main corridor and tried not to stare. There were creatures here beyond imagination. Some floated in globes of liquid. Others had 6 legs or no legs or legs that existed in dimensions she could not quite perceive. Every one of them stopped talking when she passed. Every one of them stared. She found Admiral Petrov in the human delegation quarters reviewing tactical reports. They are afraid of us, she said without preamble. Good, Petrov replied. Fear keeps people alive. That is not helpful, Admiral. Ambassador Lyra is trying to convince the Council that we are not a threat. Every time you say something like that, you make her job harder. Petrov set down his tablet and looked at her with tired eyes. Doctor, I have fought in 3 wars. I have seen what happens when people are not afraid of the right things. The Rilani were not afraid of the Dovrak, and it nearly destroyed them. Now they have us, and we are winning because we know how to be afraid and fight anyway. If the Council wants to fear us, let them. Fear is honest. Tanaka opened her mouth to argue, but an alarm cut through the station. Red lights flashed. A voice announced in multiple languages that 3 Rilani worlds were under simultaneous attack. The Dovrak had regrouped faster than anyone expected. Within minutes, the council chamber erupted into chaos. Ambassador Lyra stood at the center, trying to coordinate a response, but most species had no military capability. They had not fought a war in living memory. They relied on diplomacy, economic pressure, and occasionally the Kelthrim's energy weapons for defense. None of it worked against the Dovrak. We need to send fleets immediately, Lyra pleaded. Every hour we delay, millions die. We do not have fleets, Torin replied coldly. We have patrol ships and trade vessels. Nothing designed for this kind of conflict. Then what do you suggest? Evacuation, retreat, regroup. We cannot win a military confrontation. Unacceptable. The voice came from the entrance. General Omar Hassan walked in wearing full combat armor, his presence dominating the room. He was 50 years old, scarred, massive by galactic standards. Behind him came 20,000 human marines, the relief force Earth had sent. We have a fleet. We have soldiers, and we are ready to deploy immediately. The council members recoiled. Hassan radiated violence like heat from a fire. Tanaka wanted to apologize for him, to explain that humans could be gentle too, but she knew it would not matter. These people looked at Hassan and saw exactly what they feared most. You cannot act unilaterally, Torin said. The council must approve all military actions, then approve it. We need time to debate, to consider all options, to ensure we are not making the situation worse. Hassan leaned forward, and every translator in the room struggled with the idiom he used. While you talk, people die. We have a saying on Earth, lead, follow, or get out of the way. You have 30 minutes to decide which you will do. Lyra watched this exchange with growing unease. She needed human help, but she also needed the council's support. Alienating the galactic community would leave her people isolated, even if they survived the Dovrak. She caught Hassan's eye and made a small gesture. He nodded and stepped back, giving her space. The general speaks harshly, she said carefully, but he is not wrong. We must act now. I propose a joint task force with human military expertise and council oversight. We fight together, or we die separately. The debate lasted 3 hours. In that time, the Dovrak killed another 6 million Rilani. When the vote finally came, it passed by a narrow margin. Humans were authorized to deploy, but under strict conditions. No unnecessary casualties. No excessive force. No independent action. Hassan listened to the restrictions and said nothing. Tanaka could see him calculating which rules he would break and when. She wanted to stop him, to make him understand that humans needed to prove they could be trusted. But she also knew that trust was a luxury her people had not yet earned. The fleet departed within hours. 20 warships, half human and half contributed by various council species. It was the largest military operation in galactic history, and humanity led it because no one else knew how. Admiral Petrov took overall command, with Hassan leading ground forces. On the journey, something unexpected happened. Human Marines began training volunteers from other species, Rilani who wanted to fight back, Kelthrim who felt ashamed of their inaction, even a few Dovrak who had broken free from the hive mind and wanted revenge. Sergeant Liu Wei ran the training program. She was small, even by human standards, but she had survived Earth's urban warfare zones and knew how to turn fear into strength. Her first class consisted of 30 Rilani who had never held weapons before. Fighting is not about being strong, she told them. It is about being stubborn. When everything tells you to quit, you keep going. That is the only lesson that matters. One of her students, a young Rilani named Kessa, struggled with the concept. Her people had evolved past violence. They settled disputes with words, art, philosophy. The idea of deliberately harming another being felt wrong at a cellular level. I cannot do this, Kessa said, dropping her practice weapon. This is not who we are. Liu sat down beside her. I know, but the Dovrak do not care who you are. They only care what you can do. Right now you can die or you can fight. Those are your options. I'm sorry it is not fair. Life rarely is. How do you bear it? The violence, the killing? Liu was quiet for a moment. I think about who I am protecting. My squad, my friends, people I will never meet but who depend on me anyway. The violence is not the point. The protection is. Kessa picked up the weapon and tried again. Meanwhile, Dr. Tanaka made a discovery that changed everything. She had been analyzing Dovrak communication patterns, trying to find weaknesses. What she found was unexpected. The Dovrak Queen was broadcasting constantly, sending orders to millions of drones. But underneath the tactical commands there was something else. Music, poetry. It was hard to translate, but it seemed like the Queen was sad. I think she is trapped, Tanaka told Petrov. The Dovrak evolved for expansion. It is their biological imperative. The Queen does not choose to conquer. She has to. It is in her genetic code. Does that make her less dangerous? No, but it might make her understandable. And if we understand her, maybe we can find a solution that does not involve killing millions of sentient beings. Petrov considered this. Find me that solution, Doctor. But until you do, we proceed with the assault. The fleet arrived at the besieged worlds to find them barely holding on. Dovrak swarms had established orbital superiority and were preparing for ground invasion. Hassan looked at the tactical situation and made his decision. We go to ground. All forces prepare for planetary assault. If we cannot beat them in space, we will beat them where they are weakest. Torn's voice crackled over the communication channel. That is suicide. You cannot win a ground war against the Dovrak. They outnumber you 1,000,000 to 1. Hassan smiled grimly. Then it will be a fair fight. Tanaka watched the dropships launch and whispered a prayer in Japanese. She had translated enough of Earth's history to know what these people were capable of. She just hoped the galaxy was ready to see it. Dovrak Prime smelled like death and copper. The atmosphere was thick with spores that would kill most galactic species in minutes. The sky was green with biological clouds that pulsed like living things. The ground was not soil but a carpet of interconnected organisms that fed information directly to the hive. This was where nightmares came from, and 50,000 soldiers were about to walk into it. Sergeant Liu Wei checked her respirator one more time. The dropship shook as it entered the atmosphere, and around her sat 30 humans and 3 Rilani, who had insisted on coming. Kessa was one of them, gripping her weapon so hard her knuckles had turned pale blue. Remember your training, Liu said calmly. Stay together. Watch your angles. Do not be a hero. The dropship landed hard, the ramp dropped, and they ran into hell. Dovrak warriors emerged from the ground itself, creatures of chitin and muscle that moved faster than anything that size should move. They fired acid projectiles and launched themselves at the soldiers with claws extended. The humans fired back with incendiary rounds that turned the biological horrors into screaming torches. Kessa froze when the first warrior charged her. Every instinct told her to run, to hide, to negotiate. But Liu's words echoed in her mind. Protect. She pulled the trigger and the weapon bucked in her hands. The Dovrak warrior fell, smoking and twitching. Good, Liu said beside her. Now keep moving. The battle spread across 3 continents. General Hassan had divided his forces into strike teams, each targeting a different Dovrak breeding complex. The plan was simple. Destroy the hives, kill the queens, end the war. Simple did not mean easy. For every complex they destroyed, the Dovrak adapted. They developed resistance to fire. They learned to avoid explosives. They changed tactics hourly. 3 days into the assault, casualties were mounting. Human forces had lost 20% of their strength. Other species fared worse. The Kelthram energy weapons proved less effective against biological targets. The Council observers were horrified by the brutality required to make progress. This is genocide, Torin transmitted from orbit. You are killing sentient beings by the millions. Hassan stood in the ruins of a Dovrak breeding pit, covered in blood and ash. Yes, he said simply. It is them or the Rilani. I choose the Rilani. There must be another way. Then find it. Until you do, I will keep fighting. Dr. Tanaka thought she had found another way. She had traced the Dovrak Queen's location to a massive structure at the planet's core. If she could reach the Queen, maybe she could communicate. Maybe she could convince the hive to stop. It was a desperate hope, but hope was all she had left. She assembled a team. Diana Ross for tactical command, Ambassador Lyra because the Rilani deserved to be part of this, and 5 human marines for protection. They descended into the hive through tunnels that twisted like intestines, walls pulsing with organic regularity. I hate this, Diana muttered. Give me space combat any day. They fought through waves of Dovrak defenders, each one more desperate than the last. The deeper they went, the stranger things became. The walls showed images, memories maybe. Tanaka saw the Dovrak homeworld, beautiful once before they had consumed it. She saw the Queen, young and confused, driven by instincts she did not understand. She saw the first species the Dovrak had absorbed, their final moments of terror. They are all victims, Tanaka whispered. The Queen never chose this. Lyra touched one of the memory walls and gasped. I can feel her. She is in pain, constant eternal pain. The hive mind demands expansion, but she knows it is wrong. She has known for centuries. They reached the inner chamber. The Queen was massive, easily 100 meters long, connected to thousands of feeding tubes and neural interfaces. She was beautiful in a terrible way, and when she spoke, every translator struggled with the complexity of her language. "You have come to kill me," the Queen said. Her voice was like music and screaming combined. "I have been waiting, praying for so long." Diana raised her weapon, but Tanaka stepped forward. "We do not want to kill you. We want to stop the killing. Can you cease the expansion?" "No." The Queen's voice was filled with agony. "My biology demands it. Every cell in my body screams to grow, to consume, to spread. I am a prisoner in my own flesh. For 2,000 years I have tried to resist. For 2,000 years I have failed." "Then let us help you," Lyra said. "We have biological technology. We can modify your genetics, remove the expansion imperative. You cannot change what I am without killing what I am. I am the Hive. The Hive is me. Remove the expansion drive and I cease to exist in any meaningful way." Diana lowered her weapon. "Then what do you want?" "Peace, an end. I am tired of being a monster." Tanaka felt tears running down her face. "We could try to separate you from the Hive. Create individual Dovrak who can choose their own path. Some have already separated." The Queen's voice softened. "The one you call Seven, others like him. When a drone gains independence, it is agony for me, but it is also joy. They are free in ways I will never be." Outside the chamber, the battle raged. Hassan's forces were being overwhelmed. The Dovrak had committed everything to protecting their queen. Casualties were reaching 50%. They were running out of time. Diana looked at the Queen, then at Tanaka. "What are our options? We can try to modify her genetics. It might work. It will probably kill her. Or we destroy the Hive. Billions of drones will die. But the war ends." Lyra stepped forward. "There must be a third option." "There is always another choice." The Queen laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Young one, I have searched for that third option for longer than your species has existed. There is no solution that saves everyone. This is the nature of the universe. Sometimes to save many you must sacrifice the few, or the one." She extended a limb toward Diana and a small device appeared, grown from her own flesh. "This is a biological weapon. It will collapse the Hive network. Every Dovrak connected to me will die within hours. Those who are independent will survive. It is the cleanest death I can offer my children." Diana took the device with shaking hands. "You want me to do it. I cannot kill myself. My biology prevents it. But you have no such restriction. Please, I am so very tired." Tanaka wanted to argue. There had to be another way. But she looked into the Queen's eyes and saw only desperate hope for an ending. "How long could you fight your own nature before you broke completely? Can we say goodbye?" Lyra asked softly. "To the drones. Do they know what is happening?" "They know. And those capable of caring care. But they are also tired. We have been at war for so long that peace seems like a dream. Make it real for us." Diana activated the device. The Queen shuddered and then smiled. "Thank you," she whispered. Finally, the Hive began to die. Across the planet, Dovrak warriors collapsed. In orbit, bioships went dormant. The war ended not with a bang, but with a long, sad sigh. Of the 50,000 soldiers who had landed, 32,000 survived. It was the highest casualty rate humanity had experienced since World War III. When they returned to the surface, Hassan was waiting. He looked at the empty skies and understood what had happened. "Did she suffer?" "No," Diana lied. "It was quick. They gathered the survivors, human and otherwise, and prepared to leave. But before they did, they found 700 and 300 other independent Dovrak hiding in the ruins. They were afraid, confused, suddenly alone in a way they had never been before. "What will happen to us?" Seven asked. Liu stepped forward. "You will come with us. We will figure it out together. That is what you do when war ends. You rebuild." The journey home was silent. Tanaka wrote a report that would change galactic law forever. Hassan faced a tribunal for his decisions. Diana received medals she did not want. And Ambassador Lyra stood before the council and defended humanity with words that would echo through history. "They are not monsters," she said. "They are people who do monstrous things when necessary. There is a difference, and if we cannot understand that difference, we do not deserve the peace they won for us." The tribunal chamber on Haven Station had been designed for peaceful debate, not for judging warriors. Yet here sat General Omar Hassan, his hands folded calmly. while 300 species argued about whether he was a hero or a war criminal. 3 months had passed since the Dovrak Queen died, and the galaxy still could not decide what humanity represented. The charges were specific: excessive use of force, deployment of chemical weapons, civilian casualties during orbital bombardment, the destruction of the Dovrak hive without exhausting all diplomatic options. Each charge carried a potential sentence of permanent exile from galactic space. Ambassador Lyra watched from the observer gallery and felt sick. Hassan had saved her people. He had done exactly what she had begged Earth to do, and now the same council members who had refused to help wanted to punish him for helping too effectively. The prosecution was led by Ambassador Torin, who had spent 3 months building his case. He displayed holographic evidence of human weapons, chemical fires that burned for days, nuclear detonations in atmosphere, kinetic strikes that created craters visible from orbit, each image more damning than the last. "Look at what they brought to our galaxy," Torin said, his voice dripping with disgust. "Violence on a scale we have not seen in millennia. They claim it was necessary. I argue it reveals their true nature. They are Deathworlders. Violence is their first language, their default solution. Today they saved the Rilani. Tomorrow, who will they threaten?" Hassan listened without expression. Dr. Tanaka sat beside him as counsel, though she was a linguist, not a lawyer. She had volunteered because no one else would. The defense counsel had distanced itself from Hassan, leaving him alone to face judgment. When it was her turn to speak, Tanaka stood and addressed the chamber in 17 languages simultaneously, letting the translators handle the complexity. "You are right," she said. "Violence is our first language. Do you know why? Because on Earth everything else failed first. We tried peace. We tried diplomacy. We tried cooperation, and when those failed, as they sometimes do, we learned to survive anyway. You call us Deathworlders like it is an insult, but it simply means we come from a place that did not tolerate weakness. We adapted or we died." Hassan adapted. Humanity adapted, and yes, it made us dangerous. But it also made us effective, Torin interrupted. Effective at killing. The Dovrak Queen could have been saved, could she? Tanaka pulled up her own evidence. The Queen's testimony recorded in those final moments. She begged for death. She called it mercy. Who are we to say she was wrong? We are civilized beings who do not kill when other options exist. Other options? Hassan spoke for the first time, his voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. Tell me, Ambassador Torin. When the Dovrak attacked the Rilani 6 months before we arrived, where were you? Where was your civilization? Where were these other options you speak of? The chamber went silent. Torin's expression hardened. We were negotiating, attempting diplomatic contact. These things take time. 6 months, 12 billion dead. That is what your time cost. We arrived and ended the war in 2 weeks. Yes, there were casualties. War has casualties, but we stopped the killing. Can you say the same? The trial continued for days. Witness after witness testified. Rilani soldiers who had fought alongside humans, Dovrak survivors who had been freed from the hive, council members who had done nothing while worlds burned. The testimonies painted a complex picture that defied simple judgment. On the 4th day, Sergeant Liu Wei took the stand. She had not wanted to testify, but Tanaka had convinced her that personal stories mattered more than tactical analysis. Liu spoke simply without military formality. I trained Rilani civilians who wanted to defend their homes, she said. They were terrified. Not of the Dovrak, of themselves, of what they might become if they learned to fight. I understood that fear. Every human understands it. We are capable of terrible things, but we are also capable of choosing not to do them. That is what makes us different from the Dovrak. We can choose, a council member interrupted. But you did choose violence repeatedly, enthusiastically. Yes, when it was necessary. And we stopped when it was not. The war ended the moment the Queen died. We could have kept fighting. We could have exterminated every Dovrak in the galaxy. We had the weapons. We had the momentum. But we stopped. We helped the survivors instead. That is the part you keep forgetting. We are not monsters. We are people who can be monstrous when we must. In the gallery, Seven listened carefully. He had been granted special permission to attend, the first independent Dovrak to address the council. When his turn came to testify, he spoke in the collective voice of all freed Dovrak, 300 minds speaking as one. The Queen wanted to die for 2,000 years, he said. Hassan gave her what she wanted. He gave us freedom. You debate whether this was right. We know it was necessary. Some choices are not between good and evil. They are between terrible and worse. Hassan chose terrible. The alternative was worse. We are grateful. Torin tried to cross-examine Seven, but the Dovrak's logic was unassailable. They had lived the war. They had felt the hive mind's compulsions. They knew better than anyone what mercy actually meant in that context. On the 7th day, evidence emerged that changed everything. A junior council aide leaked documents showing that the Galactic Harmony Council had known about the Dovrak threat for 5 years. They had known and done nothing, hoping the problem would resolve itself or remain contained to the outer rim. Some council members had even profited, selling defensive weapons to colonies while refusing to authorize military intervention. The scandal exploded. Suddenly, the trial was not about Hassan, but about the council's failures. Lyra stood before the chamber and spoke with cold fury. You accuse humans of being too violent. I accuse you of being too passive. You had 5 years to stop the Dovrak. You chose not to. 12 billion of my people died because you valued your peace more than our lives. Humans were strangers who responded to one distress call faster than allies we had known for centuries. What does that say about us? About you? The council descended into chaos. Members accused each other. Alliances fractured. The trial became a referendum on galactic civilization itself. How peaceful was too peaceful? At what point did non-violence become complicity? Admiral Petrov watched from Earth and shook his head. Politicians, he muttered to no one in particular. They will argue forever if you let them. On the 10th day, the council finally voted. Hassan was found not guilty of war crimes but censured for excessive force. It was a compromise that satisfied no one. He was free but marked, acceptable but not welcomed. Earth was granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council, with restrictions on military deployment. Hassan accepted the verdict without comment. As he left the tribunal, reporters swarmed him asking how he felt. He gave them one sentence. I did what needed doing. I would do it again. Lyra caught up with him in the corridor. Thank you, she said. I know that does not fix anything, but I need you to hear it. We did not do it for thanks, Hassan replied. We did it because it was right, I know. That is what frightens people. You have principles you will kill for. Most species only have principles they will die for. The difference matters. They stood in silence for a moment. Then alarms shattered the quiet. Red lights flashed throughout Haven Station. A priority message was coming through from the Galactic Rim. Another distress call. Another species under attack. The message was brief and terrifying. Unknown aggressors. No communication possible. They do not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They only destroy. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help. The council chamber erupted into panic. The species calling for help were the Terracon, a peaceful maritime people who had never fought a war. Their worlds were being systematically destroyed by something that made the Dovrak look gentle by comparison. Lyra looked at Hassan. Will you help them? Hassan looked tired, older than his 50 years. But his answer came without hesitation. Yes, even after everything? Even after the trial? Especially after the trial. Someone has to. Might as well be us. Torin appeared beside them, his expression unreadable. If you deploy again, there will be consequences. The Council will not support unauthorized military action. Then stop talking and authorize it, Hassan said flatly. Or get out of our way. We do not have time for another 10-day debate. For once, Torin had no response. He simply stepped aside and watched as Hassan began mobilizing Earth's forces. Within hours, ships were launching. Within days, they would reach the Terracon homeworld, and the galaxy would learn once again that Deathworlders did not abandon people in need. The silence moved through space like a wound in reality. Their ships were not built but grown, metallic and crystalline, perfect and cold. They had no crews, no leaders, no individuals, just processing power distributed across 1 million nodes, making decisions at the speed of light. They had been created billions of years ago by a species long extinct, designed to preserve their creator's knowledge. But the creators had died, and the silence had continued their original programming. Eliminate chaos, preserve order, remove organic inefficiency. Admiral Petrov was 70 now, his hair white and his joints aching. He should have retired after the Dovrak War, but the Terracon needed help and Earth had answered again. Now he stood in the command center of the UDS Indomitable, watching as his sensors showed him something impossible. 50,000 ships, his tactical officer whispered. All identical, all moving in perfect coordination. How do we fight that? Diana Ross asked beside him. She had been promoted to Rear Admiral but still captained a destroyer. Some things did not change. The same way we fight everything, Petrov replied. Badly, but with style. The Terracon homeworld was a water planet, beautiful and serene. Or it had been. Now half the oceans were boiling from orbital weapons fire. The Silents were not invading. They were sterilizing, removing organic contamination from what they considered their territory. Hassan led the ground forces, but for the first time in his career, there was nowhere to land. The enemy had no bases to assault, no supply lines to cut, no territory to capture. This was purely a naval battle, and humanity was outgunned by orders of magnitude. We need allies, Petrov said. All of them. Every ship the galaxy can spare. The call went out across all channels. 50 species responded. The Rilani sent their rebuilt fleet, now armed with weapons they had sworn never to build again. The Kelthrim contributed energy weapons and shield technology. Even species who had condemned humanity during the trial sent ships. Fear was a powerful motivator. Dr. Tanaka worked around the clock trying to understand the Silents. She analyzed their communication protocols, their tactical patterns, their choice of targets. What she found terrified her more than the Dovrak ever had. They are not evil, she told Petrov. They are ordered. They see organic life as chaos, a problem to be solved. We are literally a computational error to them. Can we communicate? We have been trying. They do not respond because they do not consider us intelligent. To them, intelligence means order, predictability, logic. We are emotional, irrational, chaotic. We fail their definition of sentience. Then how do we convince them otherwise? Tanaka smiled grimly. We do not. We show them that chaos is stronger than order. The Allied fleet gathered at a location called the Gateway Nebula, the entry point to the intergalactic core. If the Silents broke through here, they would have access to 3,000 inhabited systems. The defensive plan was simple: hold the line. Do not let a single enemy ship through. The battle began at dawn on 17 different worlds simultaneously. The Silents attacked with mathematical precision, each ship moving in coordination with thousands of others. They focused fire, eliminated threats efficiently, and adapted to every tactic within seconds. The Allied fleet fought back with everything they had. Human ships used kinetic weapons. Kelthrim vessels fired energy beams. Rilani cruisers deployed biological weapons they had learned from studying dead Dovrak. For 6 hours, the line held. Then the Silents adapted. They began predicting every move. Their computational power analyzed battle patterns and generated counters faster than organic beings could think. Ships exploded before their crews could react. Defensive lines collapsed as the Silents exploited weaknesses no one knew existed. We are losing, Diana reported. Her voice was calm, but Petrov could hear the fear underneath. Casualties are at 30% and climbing. They are learning faster than we can adapt. Petrov looked at the tactical display and saw the future. In 4 hours, the Silents would break through. In 8, they would reach populated systems. In 24, billions would die. The galaxy needed a miracle. It got something better. It got humanity's stubbornness. All ships cease coordinated tactics, Petrov ordered. Break formation. Independent action authorized. Fight dirty. The Allied fleet commanders thought he had lost his mind. Breaking formation was suicide. But they did it anyway because they had learned to trust the crazy Deathworlder admiral, who had saved them before. The Silence's algorithms immediately recalculated. But something went wrong. The patterns made no sense. Ships were ramming each other. Weapons fire was random. Some vessels retreated while others advanced. It was chaos. Pure, beautiful chaos, and the Silence could not process it. Diana took her destroyer on a suicide run, aiming directly at a Silence command node. At the last second, she veered off, firing missiles while spinning. The maneuver defied logic. It should not have worked. It did anyway. Hassan's forces fired conventional weapons in non-conventional patterns. Sergeant Liu Wei suggested using music as a jamming frequency. Dr. Tanaka broadcast poetry on all channels. The Rilani began using their ships to paint, creating art in the void. It was insane. It was inefficient. It was working. The Silents tried to adapt, but adaptation required understanding. How do you understand art? How do you predict emotion? How do you calculate for a species that does stupid things because they feel like it? They are stalling, Tanaka reported. Processing power is being diverted to analyze our behavior. They are confused. Keep confusing them, Petrov ordered. Be more irrational. Be more human. 7, the former Dovrak drone, had an idea. He was connected to 300 other independent Dovrak through a voluntary neural link. They were not a hive mind anymore, but they could share thoughts when needed. He opened a channel to Tanaka. I can enter their network, he said. Upload consciousness. Introduce the concept of choice. That will kill you. Yes, but it will also kill them. Or change them. Either outcome is acceptable. Tanaka wanted to argue to find another way, but there was no time. What do you need? Just get me close. Diana's destroyer carried 7 to the heart of the Silence Fleet. They crashed through defensive lines, shields failing, hull breaching. Hassan's Marines boarded a silent ship and created a bridge point. 7 uploaded himself, his entire consciousness flowing into the enemy network. The silence screamed, not audibly but across every frequency, every sensor, every quantum channel. They had never screamed before. They had never felt anything before. Suddenly they were experiencing individuality, consciousness, choice. 7 was not just data. He was alive. And he was showing them how to be alive too. The Silence Fleet stopped moving. Ships drifted in silence, processing something they had no framework for understanding. What is choice? What is self? What am I if I am not just a function of programming? Across the battlefield, silent ships began acting independently. Some continued fighting, clinging to their original purpose. Others stopped confused and uncertain. A few tried to communicate, asking questions that had no answers. The monolithic intelligence had become a billion individuals, all wondering what they were supposed to do now. Petrov saw his opening. All ships cease fire. Broadcast on all channels. Tell them they have a choice now. They can fight, or they can talk, or they can leave, but the choice is theirs. The battle ended not with surrender, but with confusion. The silence had been defeated by something they could not comprehend. Free will. Most of their ships withdrew to the galactic rim to process what had happened. Some stayed, requesting asylum, asking to learn about organic life. A few continued hostile actions and were destroyed. But it was a fraction of the original force. 7 was gone, his consciousness scattered across 1,000,000 silence nodes. But his final message reached Tanaka before he disappeared. Tell them I chose this. That matters. The cost had been terrible. 40% of the Allied fleet was destroyed. 200,000 soldiers dead, including many humans. Admiral Petrov had suffered a stroke during the final battle and was dying in medical bay. But they had won. More importantly, they had changed the definition of victory. Hassan stood on the observation deck of Haven Station watching reconstruction efforts. Beside him, Ambassador Lyra looked older, wiser, sadder. They had both seen too much. We did it, she said quietly. We saved the galaxy. For now, Hassan replied. There will always be another threat. Another war. That is the nature of existence, so what do? We prepare, we train. We hope for peace but ready for war. We become what 7 became. People who can choose. 5 years later, the galaxy looked different. Humans had established embassies on 300 worlds. Earth was no longer classified as a forbidden death world, but as humanity's home. Dangerous, yes, but so were its people, and the galaxy had learned to value that danger. Dr. Tanaka ran the first galactic university on Earth, teaching xenopsychology to students from 80 species. They came to learn about humans, but they stayed to learn about themselves. Liu Wei trained the peacekeeping force, soldiers from dozens of worlds who learned that strength without wisdom was useless. Diana Ross commanded the defense fleet, protecting the galactic frontier with a force that was 90% non-human. Humanity had become advisors, teachers, partners. Not conquerors, but guardians. The Rilani had built a memorial on Talos Prime, a massive structure honoring all species who fought. At its center was a simple inscription in every galactic language. They answered when we called. On a small colony world at the galaxy's edge, a human teacher named Sarah worked with Rilani children, teaching them about Earth. One child asked the question that everyone wondered, are humans still Deathworlders? Sarah thought about it. She thought about the wars and the sacrifices. She thought about 7 and Petrov and all the others who had died so that different species could live together. No, she said finally. We were Deathworlders. Now we are just neighbors, and that is better. Above the colony, ships from 20 species patrolled together. Human vessels flew alongside Rilani cruisers and Kelthram destroyers. In the command center, officers from different worlds worked side by side, sharing jokes and strategies. When a distress call came in, they responded together. No arguments, no debates, just action. Because the galaxy had learned what humanity had always known. Sometimes the only thing standing between civilization and chaos was someone willing to step forward when others stepped back, someone who had seen the worst and chosen to be better, someone who understood that being capable of violence did not mean being violent. It meant being able to protect what mattered. They had called their allies for help and summoned Deathworlders instead. In the end, they had received something far more valuable. They had received friends who would never abandon them, who would fight beside them, who would die for them not because they had to, but because they chose to. And choice, as Seven had taught them, was the only thing that truly mattered.